The late 90s has been viewed by many as the golden age of anime. Ghost in the Shell, One Piece, Berserk, and Neon Genesis, just to name a few. These works are still incredibly influential today, so much so that they act as the face of anime to a lot of people, and especially Western audiences. However, all these years later, there were inevitably some titles that were remembered a bit less vividly, a bit less fondly, even if they were successful at the time. And this, of course, brings me to Outlaw Star. But what even is Outlaw Star? Is it an epic space opera slash western, a timeless love story, a wild mix of ideas and aesthetics jammed and smashed together? Or is it a loosely held together show about pirates and hot springs? Is there even a meaning here? Well, the answer is maybe. Today, we'll delve into everything from caster guns to catgirls as we explore whatever happened to Outlaw Star. Hi everyone, my name is Otto and welcome to Exits Examined. Join me as we explore the lives of individuals, products, media, and more after their prime time has seemingly come to an end. If that sounds good to you, there's a subscribe button below. Outlaw Star was written and illustrated by Takehiko Ito and ran from 1996 to 1999. It had a total of 21 volumes and was serialized in the monthly Japanese magazine Ultra Jump. It's worth noting that although there was a Chinese version published in Hong Kong, as of now, no official English translation actually exists. The manga was later converted to a 26-episode anime produced by Sunrise and originally airing on Tokyo TV in 1998. The show's excellent and extremely unique vehicles were designed by actually the same artists who worked on Macross and Gundam. In 2001, the series was tapped for the Toonami block, and it was there that the series found its way into the Western consciousness. However, the version in the US was not the same as the original Japanese one, with the removal of profanity, toning down scenes of violence and suggestive behavior, and even cutting certain problematic episodes. In fact, one of the roles of a reoccurring gay character, Fred, was pretty toned down for us delicate Americans. Outlaw Star unfolds within the Toward Star era, a universe shared with Ito's earlier work, Future Retro Hero Story. Ito characterized this earlier creation as something from a boy's dream, but adopted a more mature and scientific approach when crafting Outlaw Star. There are a huge mix of elements and inspirations in this universe, from Chinese culture, space opera, and of course, westerns. The story follows the adventures and misadventures of Gene Starwind, a devil-may-care, quick-with-guns and women type bounty hunter, along with his partner, Jim Hawking. Jim can be viewed kind of as the brains to Gene's brawn, and is the constant voice of reason, which is a little insane considering he's, 11. He's also a blatant connection to Treasure Island's Jim Hawkins, which actually shares many parallels with Outlaw Star. He acts as tech support in the business that him and Gene own called Starwind and Hawking Enterprises. Claiming to fix everything from tractors to relationships, they basically take any job they can get, which seems to be in the form of bounty hunting, bodyguarding, and equipment acquisition. In the first episode, we're introduced to Gene and his dream of one day going to space with his own ship. This dream quickly becomes a reality when him and Jim decide to take a job from the famous outlaw Hot Ice Hilda. They don't know this at the time, but she's on the run from a group of space pirates after stealing the key to the most powerful ship in the galaxy. She also forgets to mention that the reason this ship is so special is because it's controlled by a bioandroid slash naked lady named Melfina. Gene and Jim soon find themselves in the middle of the fight as they try to protect Hilda and the ship. As the show progresses, they're joined by a motley crew of characters, including Suzuka, a skilled bounty hunter, and Aisha, a member of the beast race known as the Qatar, or less scientifically known as a catgirl. Motivated by the death of Hilda, the crew of the Outlaw Star navigates the danger of space on a quest to uncover the galactic ley line, a treasure of untold riches and power. And that's the plot setup. A strong introduction, and we have a clear goal and inline. However, after the rapid pace of the intro, Outlaw Star becomes a bit episodic, and the plot takes a bit of a back seat. In fact, there are entire episodes that the main plot isn't even mentioned, and this is fine because at its heart, Outlaw Star isn't about the overarching narrative, it's about character building. The show is uncomplicated and focuses on the in-game, but doesn't take itself too seriously along the way. Despite the serious situation the characters find themselves in, there's a sense of humor and playfulness throughout the story. Overarching themes and backstories to characters are brought up, but often questions are left unanswered, and the focus of the show almost always remains fixed on the present. So at times, things can seem like a bit of a hot mess with ideas just flowing everywhere. But one thing that Outlaw Star absolutely excels at is world building and overall tone. The entire concept of grappling ships is just such an interesting and unique idea, and there's a bunch of these concepts just littered throughout the show. There's just so many ideas and genres stuffed into here. Ancient Chinese aesthetics, cowboy/western/pirates/dystopian future/space/catgirls, etc. And it's fascinating to see them all blended together, sometimes well and sometimes messily, but always memorable, with a notable mention going to the caster gun, which just looks so cool. And most of the time, these characters, world building, and story all serve to support the theme of the show: freedom. Throughout the show, we're introduced to many factions and characters who operate within their own set of rules and are subject to constraints of a hierarchy. However, the cast in Outlaw Star breaks free from these norms, adhering to their own moral compass and setting their own paths. Good stuff. So, honestly, the show was kind of all over the place, but it had a good heart. So, how was it received at the time? During its initial release in 1998, Outlaw Star garnered mixed reviews. While some appreciated its space adventure and character dynamics, it faced tough competition from other space opera animes at the time, like Cowboy Bebop and Trigun. Despite its unique ideas, it struggled to stand out in a genre that was quickly gaining momentum. Speaking of Cowboy Bebop, at first glance, it's understandable why comparisons are often made between the two. Both have similar concepts, aesthetics, release dates, and even characters, but there's no denying that Outlaw Star has been completely overshadowed by Bebop, and the question is, of course, why? What makes Bebop stand out so much more? I think this can be attributed to several factors. One major distinction lies in the art and animation quality. Cowboy Bebop boasted a more stylish, ostentatious format with complex and memorable characters and an iconic soundtrack. Not to mention, it took itself and its themes just more seriously. While there were definitely jokes and lighthearted moments, Cowboy Bebop emphasized its themes more with tragedy and loss. In contrast, Outlaw Star focused more on the thrill of the ride and being a futuristic space adventure, and some of its characters, were a bit more one-note in comparison. Regarding other notable comparisons, parallels are often drawn between Outlaw Star and the TV series Firefly. I mean, aside from scene-by-scene recreations, we're also just talking general premise, aesthetics, and themes. Interestingly enough, Joss Whedon has never confirmed or denied this, but yeah, whether intentional or not, come on, the resemblance is uncanny.
In modern times, Outlaw Star is still very much in the public consciousness, which is a bit surprising and maybe a testament to how influential that early Toonami block actually was. Most people don't dismiss it as bad, but just struggling to differentiate itself from other sci-fi anime of its time. A lot of people knock it for not being Cowboy Bebop, but I think it's a bit unfair because it's not trying to be Cowboy Bebop. It's trying to be its own thing, so of course it won't fit into that mold. Cowboy Bebop is a show that's obsessed with the past, and Outlaw Star is a show that's obsessed with the present. Its greatest fault isn't a fault of its own, it just happened to air at maybe the worst possible time. Okay, so let's get into it. What happened to Outlaw Star after its anime run? As far as projects that saw the light of day, we have Angel Links. Although spin-off might not be the right word for it, it technically was in the Toward Star universe. We see the universe from Lee Mei-Fon's perspective as she leads the Angel Links, a space escort service. She battles pirates, government groups, and a Tau master, and is haunted by troubling memories, making her question her past and why she even exists. It was also made by Sunrise and originally aired in 1999, and it did not do well. Criticisms have centered around the unoriginal plot, poor pacing, and unlikable characters, although there are still some good tech designs and ship designs here. I think a big issue here is that it's an Outlaw Star spinoff with almost no Outlaw Star. There's just not much that connects these two series other than a few consistencies in the shared universe. The rumor is that Angel Links was in production and the creators just decided to shoehorn it into the Outlaw Star universe because that's what was popular at the time, and I can kind of believe it. This would explain why the show feels so different on virtually every level here compared to Outlaw Star, and some fans felt a bit betrayed. It's sad and a bit ironic because, spoilers, this is the one true Outlaw Star spinoff that actually saw the light of day, and it's generally looked down upon by the fanbase. But wait, wasn't there an Outlaw Star 2, I hear you ask? Well, let's talk about it. A sequel, Outlaw Star 2, Sword of the Wind, was planned and would have followed the original crew of the Outlaw Star 3 years after the end of the original anime. Gene and Jim are still struggling to pay off their debts, but their constant bickering leads to a rift and they part ways. Meanwhile, an old friend of Gene's is attacked and he races off to investigate. During his travels, he would eventually captain a new ship called the Sword of the Wind while Jim falls in love. So that all sounds great, but unfortunately, this never saw the light of day. There were a few possible reasons this happened, but the most likely version is that the numbers just didn't justify it. Outlaw Star never did particularly well in Japan, although it found some success in the West, it still wasn't enough. Then, after Angel Links flopped, it was just the nail in the coffin and the project was abandoned. So, all good. At least we got a sequel manga, right? Wrong.
There was a planned manga sequel, but again, it was never released. It would have been called Outlaw Star Retaliation. However, there was no information released beyond the visual concepts that featured the Outlaw Star, Gene Starwin, and Hilda. I mean, I dug for information on this and I could barely find anything. I'm guessing just not a lot of work was even done on it. As far as why it was not released, there's no definitive answer I could find. Speculations abound that Ito was basically just done with the whole thing after Sword of the Winds was canceled, but it's kind of impossible to confirm. But it's safe to say at this point that the manga sequel, at least the original one planned, Retaliation, will not be coming out anytime soon. Now, I don't want to leave you hanging on a sad note. So, instead, I'll leave you with some good news. What if I told you there was one direct Outlaw Star spinoff media that made it into production? Okay, don't get too excited because I don't know if I could call it a spinoff or a sequel, but there was some additional official Outlaw Star content made in the form of the Outlaw Star sound and scenario tracks. It's basically just the amazing soundtrack from the anime, but included we got some original audio stories. Most of these are just light, fun kind of fluff, but there is one longer track in here detailing how Jim and Jean met. It's not anything groundbreaking or life-changing, but hey, at least it's something. It's too bad because out of everything I've covered on this channel, this is the one IP that is least likely to get a sequel at this point. I mean, it just seemed to run out of steam. But it's fascinating because despite having no sequel and barely a spinoff, the legacy of Outlaw Star remains strong, and I can honestly see why. Although there might not be so much depth to the show, the style, the tone, the aesthetics are all charming and unique. Outlaw Star, for better or worse, is a classic to many Western audiences. Its themes of exploration and self-discovery resonate even today, and its stylistic elements such as starship grappling combat and the unique blends of science and magic continue to stand out. This huge mix of influences smashed together like kids with their favorite toys somehow just works and blends together in a futuristic, chaotic, and energetic cluster that's just so fun and memorable. Outlaw Star deserves to be remembered, and it's a reminder of that golden age of anime that to this day is just so incredibly influential. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support. Dropping a like or subscribing would help me so much more than you can imagine. And if you want to do more, feel free to check out my Patreon. And as always, if you have any suggestions about what you want me to cover next, just drop a comment below. Thanks so much again. See you next time.